Right. Welcome to the special series of Real Estate Fight Club. This is a series called What Would You Do, where we talk about professional standards committee cases and code of ethics violations. Here with me today is Rachael Real. Hey, Rachael.
Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm fabulous. You ready to get down to another article?
Yeah, I'm ready to get yelled
Pull
at.
it apart and okay. So this one's, I'm gonna say, pretty cut and dry.
We'll see.
We're gonna talk
We'll
about
see.
right. We'll see, because you always manage to find some way to make it not cut and dry. So Article 13 says realtors shall not engage in activities that constitute the unauthorized practice of law and shall
Although we
recommend that
take a
legal.
law test, but carry on.
We do.
Well, I guess that's the law of the state. Not
You take a license. You take a license law exam, not a legal exam. let's put a stop to that.
All right, I'm already wrong.
Take a legal exam. You're
Let's
already wrong.
stop and restart. Okay, go ahead.
Reset. Realtors shall not engage in activities that constitute the unauthorized practice of law and shall recommend that legal counsel be obtained when the interest of any party to the transaction requires it. There are no standards of practice here because, again, this is pretty black and white.
We'll see.
You're not a lawyer. We're not lawyers.
No.
We should not play lawyers on TV. We should not play lawyers during a transaction.
We also are not therapists, cleaners, painters,
we are none
garbage
of the,
people.
I would argue that we might have to be a therapist at some points.
That is the same. We are not.
It's awful. I know, but we definitely don't want to be the painters, the lawn care guy, the maintenance guy.
I don't want to be a therapist.
All of the
either.
above.
Okay.
I don't want to either, but sometimes we're stuck in that job.
No,
which is why my hair is gray.
You're not stuck there. We'll have a side conversation. All right, what happened? Right. What did this agent do?
So we don't really have a whole lot of standard or case interpretations for this article because, again, it is pretty cut and dry. However, what we do have are states that are attorney states or attorney areas where attorneys are used regularly in every transaction. And also we have the majority of the country where attorneys are not used.
Right.
So you fall into an area in Ohio and Kentucky there where there are no attorneys that are used. Right. So where I'm at in the Chicago suburbs, and it's funny, it's not all of Illinois, it's just the Chicago and the suburbs of Chicago. If I go 45 minutes west of me, they don't use attorneys.
That's weird.
It's really kind of bizarre, and I'm not sure I really understand it, although I imagine it has to do with monetary, a monetary issue. Right, yes, because isn't everything
mafia.
Right. It's a real estate mafia. So what we could kind of talk about today is how do you, when you go through a transaction, let's start by saying, hey, both of our contracts, no matter where your contracts are from, no matter where you practice, more than likely your contracts are written by an attorney, a board attorney, checked over by the bar association from where you practice. And that's what you use when you fill out a contract for your client. What happens when you go under contract with a client and now you need an addendum? So what happens where you practice where there are no attorneys? Is it the Wild West, Jen?
This is why there's not a lot of cases for this, because I believe that we're equally all violating the code of ethics.
You're talking about in places where there are no attorneys.
Correct.
So what is your license? So, okay, so what do you guys do when you need an addendum? Is there a form that you fill out? Do you just take a loose leaf piece of paper and start scribbling down an addendum and making an addendum? Like, how do you do it?
Yes, both. So It depends on what it is. So sometimes, like in both of the states where I have my license, if it's a pre or post occupancy addendum, that's pre-written. If it's
what about things like home inspection repairs?
Yeah, that's the thing that I was going to say.
That's almost that's on everything.
That's the interesting part. No, there's really not. I mean, it just says like in workman type manner or something like that, whatever, but it's not, we basically have to write it. I think there has to be a better way. How do you guys do it?
Well, how generally speaking, how we do it is, and this is where I kind of get, I'm sure there's gonna be some attorneys that aren't going to like what I have to say if they're watching this. But as an agent, once we go through,
stop.
They should just
You're
stop.
not invited.
You're not invited to this party. So this in our area, when we have home inspection concerns, the buyer and seller do the contract, finalize everything. Once there's 2 sets of signatures and it's delivered back in final, none of us are allowed to make any changes to that. Any changes that happen to the contract are done via the attorney, via letters that go back and forth. So
That's
the
why it
challenge
takes
for
so
us,
long to close property in your state.
well, I
in your
think it
city.
takes longer to get through things because you have, it's like that too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, where when you have an agent trying to work with a seller or an agent trying to work with a buyer who's gone through a property inspection, who says, okay, and as a buyer's agent, you're counseling those clients. We've seen 35 houses in the last 2 months. We've written a ton of offers, especially in this COVID market that's we're now kind of getting out of. We've seen 37 houses. We've written offers. We've been one of 40 offers on properties. We're not getting them. We're the ones with the boots on the ground. We know the market much better than our attorneys do. I'm not going to say our attorneys don't know the market. They know because they see stuff that comes through.
Right.
But when you start, when you as an agent go, okay, let's sit down and really figure out, this is what as is means. This is what that means. This is what all these things mean in your contract. Let's talk about how we're going to address this list of concerns from your home inspection. You counsel your buyer, and then they call the attorney, and the attorney says, hey, just ask for everything. It's fine. I have a small heart attack.
But also, too, counseling the buyer on what to ask for can get a little sticky because we're also not contractors.
No, we are not, but we can say, hey, you've agreed to an as-is contract. In an as-is contract where with the contracts that we use here, an as-is contract says you are buying the property, you still have an inspection. You can do any inspection you want, but once you do that inspection, you cannot ask for any repairs, and you cannot ask the seller for any credits. And exactly, you cannot ask for any credits in lieu of any repairs. And we can't send the inspection report or even tell the seller what we found in the inspection report. They're saying, I don't want to know. I just want you to buy it. I want you to agree to buy it, and we're not doing anything else after this. But then the buyer says to their attorney, well, can I ask for this? And the attorney says, sure, you can ask for anything you want. But after we've just counseled the buyer, but you can. But then I talk to the buyer and go, are you comfortable with the seller canceling the contract? Well, no, I don't want to. Okay, well then.
But we're talking about, let's say it's not as is, there's inspection, there's an inspection. There were some concerns that the inspector and the buyer discussed about the house, and now they want to make a request. We did a regular Real Estate Fight Club episode on this, and I'm all for cash to repair the issue rather than having somebody like the other side take care of it, because
so am I 110%.
It's a can of worms.
Because, well, the way the seller is going to repair something is going to be very different than the way the buyer is going to want it repaired.
Well, and those
two concepts are never going to jive.
Our contracts are written that once you agree to the repair, the buyer then has to re-agree to the way that it was fixed. So it's like a total drama. It's like they're never going to agree.
Well, they're never going to agree, which is why I always recommend a credit in lieu of a repair. And when you ask for a credit in lieu of a repair, then you open up the can of worms for the buyer to say, well, how much is that going to cost?
Right.
And then I want to get X, Y, and Z. I want to get 27 contractors in here to look at every last little thing.
I don't want to talk about this podcast anymore. I'm done.
And you've got a buyer who won out in multiple offers. You think that seller is going to agree to any of those things? Probably not. But it's when we're at with the attorneys in there, it definitely adds to the drama. It adds to the efficiency in which we get past the attorney review period. With my preferred attorney, I write everything out. He cuts and pastes it into his legal document and sends it out the door. So he doesn't really mess with what I provide to him, which I love.
Yeah, except that you are writing it up, and that could be misconstrued as practicing law.
No, because I'm sending that to the attorney.
But if our attorney we just don't send it to the attorney, we just write it up.
You just write it up, right?
So that's
So I could definitely be happier in an instance where we didn't use attorneys, but I could see where.
Well, that doesn't sound like there's a value add there.
Yeah, we don't do title work as agents here because we have attorneys. So the attorneys are agents of the title company. So they take on that role. But now in your area, then, if you guys do all of your own addendums, then where we have to go through the attorney for that, at what point or what instance would you bring an attorney into a transaction?
We really don't.
So you draft post-closing and pre-possession agreements yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But those are forms. Now, but
Are they
honestly,
forms provided by your board that you
by
can
the
pull up the
board.
form and you fill it out? Okay.
Yeah,
So that would be, you're filling in blanks. So you're not actually practicing law. You're
right.
taking a form where you fill in the blanks and
Except
you fill it
as
in.
somebody that knows, those forms were not drawn up. The ones that I've read are not necessarily, they don't cover everything, and they're not really drawn up by somebody that knows. It's very frustrating because there's some like errors in there that, as just a landlord, I know, as dealing with tenants
Sure.
and things like that.
Right, right.
Let's take a
So
break.
who drafts those forms? Let's
Well,
talk about who drafts those after your break.
okay.
Okay.
This is so exhausting. So I'm just kidding.
Do
All
we
right.
have one for like mattresses? We could talk about mattresses and needing a nap.
Yes. Okay. Let me tell you about a couple of our favorite partners. We have so many. So right now, one of the things that we need the most are, we need clarity and we need leads. So if you are looking, you're doing your business plan, you are looking to get clear about the best next steps in order to build your business, check in with my coach, Coach John Kitchens. Go to coachcodeclarity.com, and this will help with the clarity that you will need in order to take your business to the next level. So that's coachcodeclarity.com. That's some alliteration right there, Rachel.
That is.
Just like
Yes.
Rachael Real Estate.
It is, right.
The other one I want to talk to you about is leads. And so we get a lot of our leads from Pipeline Pro Tools. So what you do is you go to pipelineprotools.com/fight club. They will give you the playbook that I'm using to get leads, get buyer and seller leads. They'll do a free demo for you, give you the free playbook. If you do want to use their tool, you can, which we like using it. It's a posting tool. So go to pipelineprotools.com/fight club and sign up for a free demo. All right. So in the addendums, the inspection addendums are not pre-written. There's one sentence that's pre-written in my states.
So who drafts these forms that you fill in? Is it the attorney, like the broker lawyer committee?
I assume
Broker
it's
lawyer committee of
somebody.
your board?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But that doesn't, I mean, so the pre and post occupancy is a form, so that's not a problem. The problem is the inspection addendum or any other
Right.
addendum that's not pre, where you're not filling in, right?
Well, right. That's where you teeter on the line of the unauthorized practice of law.
Well, right. So it's like, I can understand how we're teetering that line. And
Right.
it's also like, but it's not common to get an attorney involved. And we do see the situation often. And then if like an attorney is involved, then God, how much more is that
Do you
going to
have a
cost?
transaction? Well, true. Do you ever have you had a situation in the last couple of years that you can recall where you had to bring an attorney in, and what that was the idea that it was surrounding, and what was the outcome?
Only when somebody's upset, like after the transaction, like somebody wants to sue somebody, it's like, well, you need to call an attorney because like I'm not an
Well,
attorney. Like,
right after
yeah,
the transaction,
but
absolutely. There's not much you can
not during the transaction that I
do. Okay.
can. Maybe I've said you should reach out to an attorney. Like, I think I have said, like, they were upset and I was like, okay, well, you need to reach out to an attorney to understand your rights, on the buyer or the seller side. And typically what ends up happening is after they talk to the attorney, they're like, okay, we'll work it out. Because here's the thing that I know about like having an attorney involved. Every time that I've had to get an attorney involved, you end up paying more for the solution that you already had.
I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to disagree.
So it's irritating,
especially when you're going through, through a scenario where, especially for home inspection items, where it's the same thing over and over and over again. I wish we did have an attorney or a form that we could just take that, and anything beyond that, if you need a post-closing agreement, fine, take care of that with an attorney. If you need a pre-closing possession agreement, take care of that with an attorney. Things that revolve around home inspection items, I feel like it's just getting a lot of,
but like,
it's a lot of
a better
unnecessary
way?
back and forth. I know it's a lot. It's a lot of back and forth.
Well, if the buyer is not a contractor, we as real estate agents are not contractors. The inspector is also not a contractor. The listing agent and the sellers are not contractors. So our solution now is get all these fucking people in your house to tell you how much this stuff is going to cost. And it's like, dang, prolongs it. It's a pain in the ass. Like
it is. And I don't have a lot of sellers who would agree to let a buyer bring in 5 different people for different estimates, because now it's not an inspection anymore. Now it's an estimate. But I will say the workaround that I have for that is that we've got, during a home inspection, okay, so electrical, for instance, is always a big one. So when the inspector I always take a picture of the panel. I take a picture of the panel cover off when the inspector is inspecting it, take it up close. And then if there's electrical issues, I'll have a copy of their report also. I'll screenshot that portion of the report with a better photo. And I'll say, okay, if you want, I can send this to my electrician. He can take a look at it, give you a ballpark. Now, this isn't going to be, he's not going in there and starting to rip out stuff.
Right.
Even if he came to the house and did an estimate, he can only look at what he can see. Once you get into the walls, that's a whole different ball of wax. But I said, at least you can have somebody take a look at this. Is this a $1,500 issue, or is this a $10,000 issue?
But is there a technology that's available or that could be developed where you could give a proper estimate without going there? Or does it make sense to have inspectors also licensed contractors? Or like,
I know from my experience and my conversations with inspectors here, they are not allowed to quote estimates for repair. They're simply allowed to say, hey, we're going to recommend you get an estimate from the local licensed plumber, the licensed electrician, the licensed professional for that particular specialty.
But
so they can't even quote that.
What about having a contractor do the quote unquote inspection instead of an inspector?
Well, you would have to be licensed as both here, because the inspectors are licensed and required to do
that. What if it's not an inspection? Like not an actual, like it's during the inspection period, but like in our states, we're allowed to have anybody come through that we want to review the property. Right. So this is a person that we choose and to review the property. And while they're maybe not so can't we do that?
Well, the problem with that here would be is if you had a contractor in who wasn't a licensed inspector, they found in it, say you bought in your Uncle Joe, who is a retired electrician. He's no longer a licensed electrician. Uncle Joe did electrical work 20 years ago. He came in and looked at the panel and said, yeah, there's a problem. It's going to be about $2,000 to fix it. If that buyer goes back to the seller and asks for a credit of $2,000, that means nothing, because it didn't come from a licensed inspector. It came from Uncle Joe.
But if it came from an actual contractor, it could mean
right.
Something.
And there are some exactly. There are some, instead of in lieu of a regular inspection, you could have a plumber, an electrician, a general contractor, a structural engineer. You could have whoever you want in there, but you kind of have that 1 3-hour window on a Tuesday afternoon, and good luck getting all those guys in there at that time.
You know what would solve this problem?
A lot of wine.
No. What if what if the house, when you listed your house, there was like an open period where it was open, right? Like an open house and people could come in or whatever.
Right.
And by the time you wrote the offer, there was not a contingency on
I think that would be freaking awesome. How awesome would that be? It would require sellers to be a little more flexible in terms of letting people into their house. But as a seller, I would much rather, it's almost like a pre-listing inspection, if you think about it, and then taking care of those items.
Yeah.
I have done a pre-listing inspection on my own house when I sold it. Now, I didn't use an inspector, but I have followed around so many inspectors over 18 years that I know exactly what everybody's looking for. And I will tell you, I went through and I changed every outlet in my house. I changed every light switch in my house. I checked everything, every toilet, every fixture, everything. Also used that opportunity to teach my, I think, 10-year-old at the time how to change an outlet. He's like, why are you showing me this? I'm like, because you're going to need it sometime.
You're going to need it.
Right.
The only
thing that was found in that inspection when I did go to sell it was a teeny tiny, almost undetectable gas leak from an old gas line that was capped off when the kitchen was renovated. That was it.
The only problem I can see,
I held all that power in the negotiations at that point, because I know, go ahead, I challenge you to find something in here.
Right. The only thing I can see what would be wrong with that is, let's say you and I are buyers and we have our agents and we're walking through the house and we're like, okay, well, plumbing is a big issue for me. I see there's old trees. I want to have a plumber come look. the issue could be like, well, what if one of these people breaks something? You will never know who it is. Also, if you bring in your, like, I'm paying to bring in the plumber. Now you're benefiting from the information, but you're not paying.
Well, you're not sharing that as a seller. You're not, as a buyer, you're not sharing that information with the seller.
But there's going to.
So if you bring out a plumber for a sewer scope, which there's some municipalities now that are saying, hey, we're going to require every transaction to do a $500 sewer scope. Now the governmental affairs committee is getting involved and saying, hey, you're stepping way over the bounds here. But so, yeah, I had a buyer that wanted to do a sewer scope years ago. We did the sewer scope. If there was any issue, that came from a licensed plumber.
No, I'm saying if we're doing it like open house styles and we're both buyers.
Right.
So now, even though we're not like sharing the results, like there's some stuff that you just know by how it's going, by witnessing.
Sure.
Anyway, oh my gosh, we got to stop. This is driving me to drink. I'm only doing What Would You Do's with you in the afternoon from now on. This will now be released in the afternoons. I can't deal with Rachel in the morning. I'm just kidding.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I
know. It's a lot. Well, every one of these things. I mean, this started with a 2-sentence, one sentence, Article 13. Don't practice law. I mean, look where we spiraled out to.
It's cut and dry. That shit ain't cut and dry. All right,
well,
Rachel.
Nothing is black and white.
Nope.
Let that be your lesson for today. Nothing is black and white.
That is your lesson. I love it. Rachel, if people have a referral for you in Chicago or they want to connect with you, what's the best way?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone at 630-542-8688 or via email at rreal@dealwithreal.com.
Awesome. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a podcast.